Can you hear me? Can you see me? Is anybody home? Let's see. Wait for somebody to get up in here. Can you hear me? I'm not talking loud enough. If somebody was in here, then I'll be able to answer somebody. What's up? What's up, people? Okay, so your boy been been out here living life. This is it's been struggles, it's been ups and downs, it's been goods and bads. But I've been out of prison longer than I've been out since I was 9 years old. That's crazy because I've been out 9 years now. And this is a big accomplishment for me. For people that know me, I've been in and out of some kind of incarceration since I was 9 years old. It's sad. It's a crazy story. And, some of it is like, man, nah, that's not true. That really didn't happen. But yeah, it did. It all started out, with a little kid who was trying to, in his eyes, he was protecting his family. Situation, got messed up, and grown ups was doing stupid shit, and a child, uh, excuse me, did what he thought he had to do, trying to protect his family, and ended up shooting somebody, and but somebody hit my mom. And, like I said, I was 9 years old. There was no way I could go, fight nobody. My dad was getting beat up. So what was I supposed to do? But that started my life of crime. That was the beginning, because from then on, it was one after another, because I think my first offense was assault with a deadly weapon. After that, I broke into a house when I was 11. You know, I was the smartest kid in the group. Yeah. Nah, I was a little kid in the group. And the older kids had me, climb in the window. I didn't know what the hell I was doing. I went up in there. I was stealing burritos. And I think I took a cordless phone and like a calculator. And these fools was in there looking for money, They was in there looking for jewelry, TVs, VCRs. This was back in the 80s, So back in the 80s, things was different, and money was not that easy to come by, You had to get it where you can get it when you could get it. And like I said, I was a little kid. I was a knucklehead. I was bad acting. I was trying to make a name for myself. That was all I wanted. When I was a kid, all I wanted was a name and a reputation. The cold thing is I got that reputation. I got it. It took me a whole bunch of years, but now, there's a lot of stories, but this is the one I like the most. One of my homeboys, one of my homegirls, my homeboy's baby mama, she's from the hood, and she came up to visit, and I'm in the visiting room, and she's like, "That's the big homie." That's because she's heard about me, because her family, grew up with me and been knowing me forever. So she has never met me because I've been locked in the cage for all these years. So she's up in there and she's like, "He's like a legend. He's like a legend. He's like Bigfoot. Everybody heard of him, but ain't nobody seen him." Because I was gone for a long time. And that's the thing now, like I said, I've been out here longer than I've been out since I was 9 years old, and that's 9 years. That's an accomplishment for me. It don't matter about nobody else or what nobody else thinks. Man, I'm out here living my best life. This is the longest I've been out. This is the most I've ever had. This is the best I've ever been doing. The company that I work for, I work for a good company because they helped me. They knew I was damaged. They knew I was damaged when they got me. I'm broken, bent, twisted, and all kinds of fucked up. But I'm still here. And you know what I'm saying, I make things happen. If you know what I'm saying, now this company that taught me a whole lot. I learned, you know what I'm saying, the use of a whole bunch of tools. I've learned, you know what I'm saying, I'm certified on, you know what I'm saying, a whole bunch of different equipment, heavy equipment and, you know what I'm saying, smaller equipment, forklift, telescopic lifts, um, backhoes, skid stirs, mini X, excavators, backhoes, whatever you got. You know what I mean? I got a wheel loader at the yard. I'm the main operator. I take care of whatever is needed. I'm also in charge of transportation. I'm also in charge of the mud pit. I'm also the tool man. I'm also, I do whatever's needed. But you know what I'm saying, I made myself a place. This is a spot. You know what I mean? Because with me in this spot, I'm an asset. I'm taking care of things, and the company's making money. As long as the company's making money, and I got a job, man, that's I'm saying. I'm trying to stay working. You know what I mean? Because this is working. This is working better than anything I've ever done. Now don't get me wrong, I don't have everything I want, but I have everything I need. All my family is healthy. I got a brand new grandbaby in the house. I got a beautiful wife. I got a wonderful life. I gotta work, you know what I mean? But man, it's worth what I have, because people don't understand. I spent over 20 years in a cage, in a cell, locked in a box, trying to survive with, you know what I'm saying, literally with people trying to kill me. Not joking, not, you know what I'm saying, just here trying to, you know what I'm saying, get likes and, you know what I'm saying, you know what I'm saying, none of that. Nah, I literally had people trying to kill me. I've been stabbed 13 times. I've been in more fights than I can remember. You know what I'm saying, this is the longest I've been I this is the longest since I put my hands on anybody in a long time. And that's an accomplishment for me. Because I've had anger issues. I've had, you know what I mean, I got get back issues. I got, you know what I'm saying, revenge issues. I got, you know, issues where I just don't like this. But that's the thing, I put all that aside, and I'm focusing on positivity and nonviolence, because I learned a lot of things through all the fighting I've been, as many fights as I've been in. The sad thing that I learned is when two people disagree, two men have a problem. I was raised to believe two men had a problem, they take it over, you know what I'm saying, take it in the corner, in the back, or behind the building, and they deal with it like men, one on one. And after they, what I'm saying, leave up out of there, then, what I'm saying, it's over with. You leave that problem there behind that building, and y'all come out and start over. You know, I don't know. The new generation, I heard they can't, you know what I'm saying, they take a ass whooping, they go out, what I mean, pull a gun and come back and shoot you. I don't know. You know what I mean? This is just what I heard. Is it that way? Is that the get down? You know what I'm saying? I'm asking, I'm just trying to find out, because it's so much out here that we be missing. I know I missed out on all kinds of man. Look, like I said, I spent over 20 years of my life in some kind of cage, and that's in and out from, you know what I'm saying, that's just the California prison. That's not counting the juvenile and in and out of there since I was 9. My first offense I was 9, my second offense I was 11. You know what I'm saying? I got, you know what I'm saying, after that, I got an assault on my father. My father called the police on me and said I hit him. And all I did was push him. As much as he be hitting on, the rest of the family, I was a little kid. I didn't understand none of this, but he was abusive. He had alcohol problems, and, it wasn't, I don't sit here and whine and I'm not trying to get nobody's sympathy, because it's a whole lot of people had it way worse than me. And I know many of them. I grew up with some of them, and I've been in places where, you know, I don't know, I don't want to speak on all that, but, it was grimy. It was grimy in a real way, and I don't have to live like that no more. You don't have to live like that. You know what I'm saying? There's choices, you know what I'm saying? And I found, you know what I'm saying, I got into a drug program because I wanted something different. And I had been, you know what I'm saying, I had been in the cage, you know what I'm saying, my the last term, the longest term I did was 12 years, 7 months. So after that, I wanted something different. So, this is when I got into the drug program, and I changed myself. I got the company, got it, found the company that I work for to this day. Next year, I'm going to get a 15-year watch. You know what I mean? I've been with the company, you know what I'm saying, I got my 14-year anniversary this month. And it feels good being part of a team that's doing something. You know what I mean? This YouTube, this couldn't happen, you know what I'm saying, without what we do. I'm in fiber optics, you know what I'm saying? We're building the 5G network out here, putting up the antennas, putting the fiber optics in the ground, putting the cable up on the lines. You know what I mean? We were out there building nodes, antennas, splicing. I was splicing fiber and all kinds. You know what I'm saying? Hubs all over San Diego. Man, I learned, and the companies taught me a lot. And like I say, you know what I'm saying? I love this company because they've been there for me when I was having problems, when I was going through struggles, when I got out of prison and I was in this drug program. There was a mentor uh, that was the San Diego manager, and he was the big boss, and he knew my situation, and he would check on me. And he met my parole officer, and you know what I'm saying, after he met my parole officer, he called me in the office. He was like, "Hey man, you know what I'm saying, that dude, he wants you back in jail, man. Do whatever you have to do to get him off your back. Whatever he wants you to do, you do it. If you have any problem with the foreman, anybody, you tell him to come talk to me about it. You just do whatever he needs you to do and get him off your back, man, because that dude, he don't want nothing good for you." And I'm like, damn, because I barely know this guy. And ever since then, he was a stand-up guy. I remember after my first year of working for the company, I went to my review. And for me, if I look at it like prison. This is the way it was when I was in prison, and you have to go to a review every year. So this was my review, and the boss called me in and he asked me about my personal life, my whole situation, about where I'm living, the program I'm in, what I'm doing, what my goals are, where I came from, what I've been doing, and what I want to do in the future. So he asked me, "Do you want to work aerial or do you want to work underground?" He gave me options. He told me, I'm saying, either one, you can go as far as you want. It's up to you. But, I'm saying, if, I'm saying, I had talked to other guys and I've been hearing, and I ask questions and I'm learning and I'm asking these guys, and they've been telling me, yeah, man, if you climb a pole every day, eventually you're going to fall. It's inevitable. It's just going to happen. Eventually, you're going to fall. I don't want to fall. I'm a big guy. I don't want to fall. So I don't want to do aerial. I'll do underground. I figure, I'm saying, what I got to do if I'm underground, how I got to worry about falling. But no, I'm saying, there's hazards everywhere. When I was trained to go into the manholes where the communication cables are, not into the sewer, into the manholes that house communication lines under the streets and highways all through every city across this great United States. No, I've been through manholes all over Southern California, really, because we've worked other places. I've done work Santa Barbara, L.A., Sun Valley, what was that? Fontana, couple other places, but all up and down California. The company has sent me all up and down California. Who we got? Sup, Snow? Good to see you. Haven't seen you in a little minute. on late night tonight. Yeah, man. You know what I'm saying? The holidays. There's been a lot going on, man, but life is good, man. You know what I'm saying? It was a struggle there for a minute, you know what I'm saying? They was choking your boys' pockets off. But man, you know what I'm saying? Life is good. I'm still here, you know what I'm saying? Man, keep pushing, can't stop, won't stop. Trying to, you know what I'm saying, trying to make it to the next one. Hoping I'll wake up in the morning. But had a good night, man. Had to, you know what I'm saying, usually I come through around 9, but had to take the wifey out, man. I ain't had time to spend with the queen and get out and do some us time. So yeah, you know what I'm saying? I'm here popped in on a late night, just chopping it. Uh, I remember back when I was going through it with my father. So the first time, my first offense, assault with a deadly weapon when I was 9. When I was 11, I robbed a house around the block from my mama house, and you know what I'm saying. Got caught up for that. Then I got assault on my father. Then they sent me to juvenile camp. That's right. G, are you on that TikTok? Man, I went on there once. My homie been telling me to go on there. I gotta go on there. You know what I mean? I'm like, this is the only thing, you know what I'm saying? I'm just on YouTube. You know what I'm saying? There's a whole bunch of other platforms I need to tap into, but I'm still learning and working my way through. And it's like this is a little time consuming. And I work 10 hours a day. So you know what I'm saying? I've been trying to dedicate more and more time to my book because that's my little money maker. But it's what I'm saying, it's slow going because I want shit right, and I'm trying to, what I'm saying, go back and tell the story from, what I mean, from when it began. And that's crazy, because to me, I look at it as, there's a chapter that's still going on right now. The Joey that's here on YouTube today is not the Snowroc that people heard about. You know what I mean? Because you know what I mean. A lot has changed. I got shit to lose now. At one well for a long part of my life, I felt I didn't have nothing to lose. So it was just let's go. You know what I mean? I'm just gonna get what I want right now. And you know what I'm saying? For right now, I'll be okay. But I wasn't thinking about tomorrow, the next day, and that ended up to me spending over 20 years stuck in a cage. Not one time. Like I say, my first offense as an adult, I robbed a drug dealer. The drug dealer came to court and said I stole the drugs he was selling out of his house. How do you do that? That ain't possible. But you know what I'm saying, the system, it ain't fair, it ain't set up. You know what I mean? I didn't know nothing about the law. And then later on down the line, after, you know what I'm saying, getting whooped, you know what I'm saying, I learned because, they couldn't do that. That's against the law. Yeah, but wasn't nobody looking and wasn't nobody saying nothing. And these people in the courtroom who are supposed to be your defender, your, you know what I'm saying, counsel or your, you know what I'm saying, whoever it is, they're all on the same team trying to, you know what I'm saying, get you stuck in that box, you know what I'm saying, free labor. And that's how they it's crazy that's how they make money, but I was a slave. I was a slave for almost 20 years. And I worked in there. I worked for pennies. I worked in the cage for pennies. I started out, I remember PIA. I wanted this was a job I had to, you know what I'm saying, pay some people, you know what I'm saying, one was my homeboy, you know what I'm saying, he twisted some paperwork to get me in the front of the line. But you know what I'm saying, I had to pay this other dude, you know what I'm saying, to get me up in there quick, and you know what I'm saying, because I needed to make some bread. I'm a hustler, but you know what I mean, this is you know what I'm saying, money in the bank. I make, you know what I'm saying, a certain amount every month, and this you start out at 30 cents an hour, and the most you can make is 95 cents an hour. So you can't even make $1 an hour. So basically you're working for pennies. And I was in there for 5 years in that same prison working for pennies. Started out in a textile mill, and I worked in there for years and became the lead man of several sections. And then they shut down a textile mill. But when they shut that down, they took me to maintenance because they knew I was a worker. So they put me to work. And while I was in maintenance, I was learning a few things that I was interested in. One was welding. And I got moved out of there without getting the welding that I was promised, that they was going to teach me for coming over and taking all this equipment down and doing all this work I did. And then, when it came time, oh no, we need you to go over here and go into the shoe factory. And I wasn't really, into that, but I got forced into it because of the situation. And then, I was a lead man, so I'm making 95 cents an hour. And at the same time, I had a whole bunch of other hustles. But, this one kept the cheat off me. Because it kept me going to the canteen, spending money that I made from work. And everybody sees this, so I can have a whole bunch of canteen in my cell. And then I got people bringing me bags every day, and all the police know this and see this. They even got cops that let people into the building, and they're not even supposed to be in this building, but they let them come to the building and come to my cell and give me a bag of groceries. Oh, what's that for? Oh, Snowroc does a football pool. And that all the cops know Snowroc does a football pool. Whenever I get patted down, I got my little square sheet in my pocket with my pen, and it's like I didn't leave out my cell without checking my pockets: pen, chapstick, comb, ID, wallet. Oh, let's go. I'm good. So that's the way it was, and that's the thing. When you leave up out of there, you got to know where everything is at because you never know. And like I said, I was hustling, so I had a lot of stuff going on, and in those bags, there was a lot of stuff moving around. And I had, situations where I had people that I was dropping off bags just to hold for me. And then if you need something, getting something out of there, don't worry about it. But hold on to this for me. And that's the way it was. I had, like, at one point, I think, now it wasn't mine, it was the cars, because SDC, we stick together and we take care of each other because this is all we got. So that group, we gonna stick together. So while I was there, when one of the homies was going home and the homie has a TV, he's gonna leave the TV to us. And then, we take the name off, put somebody else's name on it, and put it in there. And then the police look at it and they see his name, so they don't check the paperwork at R&R, and which is receiving and release. That keeps a record of what you received and what you should have on your bed card. It's a lot, but yeah, the all that stuff that I went through in there helped me to prepare and deal with what I'm dealing with now. I'm still working on, myself. I'm still, mentally, I'm not, I'm not all there. I don't know. But I'm working on it. That's the thing, and as long as you're working on it, you have opportunities to do better, to stand tall, to step up, to do what's needed, you know, to do what's right even when no one is looking. That's the hard thing. That's the hard thing. I'm learning, but that's the hard thing. Is doing what's right even when no one is watching. Because a lot of people are performing. They're just performing. They want people to see them doing this. Look at me. Look at what I'm doing. I'm doing this. Look at me. But you got to do it when no one is looking. Those are the ones that need it. Those are the ones that really need the help. And I don't know. The grandstanding and high signing. Look at me. I don't know. How's that work out? Because I'm saying. I don't know. It looks pretty good. I see a whole bunch of people And they get, you know what I'm saying, so is that how it works? I don't know. You know what I'm saying? I do my job. And I think, you know what I'm saying, if you work hard, it pays off. Everybody has their own opinion. It's like I said, it's choices, and everybody has to choose. You know what I'm saying? Do what it do. But yeah, you know what I'm saying. I will see y'all next time. Keep this one short. I'll holler y'all.